reader. Hey, I'm here today to give you guys some recommendations for Asian books for you guys to read. I know that we are rounding off Asian Reading Month, but you can definitely read Asian books at any point in time throughout the years. And you know, like I definitely don't tend to focus my reading on specific representations throughout specific months. I'm doing so this year for Herkjet, but otherwise I just try to read somewhat well-rounded throughout the year. And so I'm gonna do two videos for this. So today's video is going to be the literary fiction, or just like, I mean, it's mainly gonna be literary fiction. I was gonna say it's just a not fantasy one, but actually it's probably all gonna be literary fiction. And then the second video is going to be fantasy recommendations, and so those will come later this week. But so, let's go into the literary fiction representation, and let me talk about the fact that Asian heritage is more than just Southeast Asia. I think when we hear the word Asia, a lot of us automatically kind of think of China and Japan, India, those countries, and we kind of look at those cultural vibes. However, Asia is a much bigger continent than just that, and so there are also going to be books in here that are very much more widely Asian than just Southeast Asia, and definitely that is also something to keep in mind, because I think there is quite a lot of attention to Southeast Asian literature nowadays when it comes to publishing industry, but definitely there are more widely spread literature for us to explore as well, and I definitely am culprit of this. I love Southeast Asian literature. I very much love Japanese literature, for example, so I've been exploring that a whole ton, but I would love to go further when it comes to my reading taste. And I'm also going to include a Turkish author in here, and Turkey is kind of like, you know, the brink. It's part of it is European, but most of it is Asian, so we're including that in here as well. First book is by an Afghan author, and that is Khaled Hosseini, and this is And the Mountains Echoed. This is probably most people's least favorite, Khaled Hosseini, which is why I'm including it here, because I still absolutely loved it, but that is also coming from somebody who is still not yet read The Kite Runner, and I don't know why I'm waiting, because I have read A Thousand Splendid Suns, I have read And the Mountains Echoed, and I have loved both of these books. Both of these books have a heartwarming and mainly heartbreaking storyline. Definitely The Thousand Splendid Sun has a much more like heartbreaking storyline probably than heartwarming, but I definitely enjoy the writing style, the stories that Khaled Hosseini writes, and so The Kite Runner is his most famous work, so one day I will have to put myself to it, and I am making it sound like it's a horrible chore, but it won't be, but I don't know why I'm procrastinating on it. But so And the Mountains Echoed is a story about two siblings, so our protagonist and his younger sister, and how he is like willing to give up everything to like have her have the life that she deserves according to him, and about a journey that they go off on when his father takes her somewhere to do what, I don't actually remember, and he is like determined that he will not get separated from her, and he probably gets separated from her, right? I remember absolutely loving this book, and I think I probably love it a little bit more than I love A Thousand Splendid Suns, just because I think that this one is a little bit less heartbreaking than A Thousand Splendid Suns was. Speaking of another book that talks about hardship, and let's talk about another bittersweet books. I think a lot of my preferences in literature clearly go to the bittersweet, which is why healing fiction sometimes really works very well for me, though I've started to have some issues with like the formatting of it. This is not a healing fiction. This is The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. I would not call it a healing fiction, but that's also just because it doesn't follow that structure that healing fiction is so well known for, even though if I now think about it, maybe it actually does. But basically we're following our protagonist, who is taking his cat on a trip, and he's going to different friends, I think, looking for somebody who can take the cat from him due to circumstances. But Heartbreaking book, I will already warn you in advance, but it also is one of my favorite reads of all time, and actually now I'm like, I actually really want to reread this one. More bitter than sweet, Beijing Coma by Ma Tian. So this is Chinese literature, and this is Chinese literature that will be looking at mainly, I think, the period of the Cultural Revolution, but if I'm not mistaken, it probably also went into the period of the Japanese occupation, which came before the period of the Cultural Revolution. But I'm not entirely sure of that anymore. I don't fully remember whether we do that. We're definitely very much centered around the time period of the Cultural Revolution in China, and this is definitely a bleak novel when it comes to that, but probably my favorite novel when it comes to this time period. I've read quite a few works in the meantime that go into this time period within Chinese history, and sometimes it works better for me than in other times, and with this book I definitely felt it very strongly, but this definitely is a very depressing read, so be wary going into it. Another Japanese book is The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. She's probably more well known for The Memory Police, because that book just kind of blew up on the bookternet for some reason, but I personally definitely prefer The Housekeeper and the Professor over this, because this is a story about a housekeeper basically who gets assigned to this professor of mathematics. However, he is dealing with an issue where he can no longer really remember all that well. I think he has a memory of like 90 minutes or something like that. However, this book is very much about his world vision, I guess, and about how to make connection between different people in spite of these types of limitations to his memory, which would make you think that, okay, he cannot really build a deep connection because he will not really remember, he will not be able to build off of previous conversations. However, their conversations use the language of mathematics to bring each other close to one another, and I absolutely adored that. Next up, I'm going to talk about two books. Next up, I'm giving you two books for my favorite author, and that is Elif Shafak. So probably her currently most well-known and most beloved book is There Are Rivers in the Sky. So this is her most recently released at this point in time, and by many considered to be her best book yet. I would probably definitely concur. I just have a soft spot for another book that I'll introduce after this. But so this is a book about water. It is a book that is going to combine the lives of three people across time and in different places throughout the world, and their connection to water and how their stories connect to one another. Absolutely love this, as I said, but I just have a soft spot for another one, so that's why I want to talk about that one. I do actually really want to reread this one at some point, but she has a new book that has been announced, though there was no release date yet, so I'm not entirely sure yet when I'll get my next Elif Shafak, but I do still have quite a little bit of her backlog, like her back catalogue for me to get through, so I'm not struggling for new Elif Shafak for the time being. But so the Elif Shafak that actually for me started my winning streak with her is The Bastard of Istanbul. Basically, I had a mediocre experience with the first book by her that I read, which is 10 minutes and 38 seconds in this strange land, where half of the book I absolutely adored and the other half I didn't enjoy as much. And so I maybe would have never picked up Elif Shafak again unless if it weren't for this particular book in my hands, because I got this through a book subscription box, and so it was trusted into my hands. I read it, absolutely adored it, 5-star read. Do I remember much about it? No, probably not. I think it is about a Armenian family, and I think what we are following basically two young adults, one who is living there or maybe in Turkey, not entirely sure, and one whose family has basically moved to the US and she is visiting her relatives, and that's all that I really remember. But I remember that is sort of like my first Elif Shafak in which I feel like 100% fell for her writing style, because Elif Shafak has a beautiful prose, but also the immersion that you feel into culture, into the food, and into the feeling of another culture. And so I always love reading Elif Shafak's works and being transported into another culture. So those are the books that I'm going to be highlighting in this particular video. There are definitely a whole lot more that I've read, definitely a whole lot more that I also love. Some of them I've just decided to leave out because I'm always talking about this book, or not always, maybe it's actually been a while I think since I talked about that particular book, but I also didn't want to always repeat the same sort of book, so I feel like most of the books that I've talked about in here I haven't mentioned in a very long time, so they were due a repeat, and some of them are pretty new in terms of me having read them as well. I currently have no Asian books that are non-fantasy over on my TBR card, so definitely let me know if you have some sort of a recommendation for a book by an Asian author. As I indicated, any Asian nationality will do, and definitely let me know why I should pick that particular one up. I am definitely feeling like I want these TBR cards to be more of a mix again, because currently I feel like it is very fantasy heavy. I think there are like 80% or so, or even more maybe, of this card is fantasy at the moment, and definitely it could do with a little bit more of a mix in future. But so yeah, that was it for this video from me, guys. As indicated, my next video will be recommending fantasy books by Asian authors, and so definitely if that is something that interests you, go and check out that video as well. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!